Welcome to this edition of Lockwood Rotax Tech Talk. I'm Phil Lockwood.
I'm Dean Vogel.
We are here at the Lockwood Aviation Facility in Sebring, Florida, where we can handle all your Rotax needs from parts and accessories to complete engine overhaul. Now today we're going to talk about troubleshooting the ignition system, just some basics. The 9 series engines, they've produced over 50,000 of them, and although the ignition system is very reliable, it's an electronic system, we do see some mag drop issues every now and then, and Dean is going to explain to you how to get started with the troubleshooting process so that if you call in, it can go a lot more quickly. So Dean is a great flowing electrons expert, and so go ahead, Dean, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, if you do have a problem with your mag check, there are 3 basic checks we'd like you to do before you call, and we can get a lot out of the way if you can do that. Now, before I give you those 3 steps, you need to know how to work with the connectors on the ignition system for the engines. So we're going to take you to the hangar and show you how to do that first. Now, these connectors are really easy to work with once you know how to work them. The problem is they're made out of this translucent plastic, and it's hard to see features, and people tear them up trying to figure out how to make them work. The connectors are mounted on a metal bracket, and if you look through the plastic here, you can see the metal tab inside a pocket on that connector. If you look at the end of the connector, you can see that the end of that pocket is open, and you can see the end of the metal tab. Right next to the metal tab is a plastic tab, and if you push that plastic tab, it releases the connector from that metal tab. So if I push that with my thumbnail, that releases it, and I can slide the connector off of the metal tab on the bracket. Now, the male connector almost entirely disappears inside the skirt of the female connector. And if you look inside the skirt there, you can see that there's a 1/4 inch wide plastic tab there, and that's what latches the 2 connector pieces together. So if you lift that away from the male connector, that releases it, and then you can pull the 2 pieces apart. What it does is it catches on this barb on the male connector, something you probably wouldn't notice if you didn't catch your finger on it or somebody didn't point it out to you. Now, on the male connector, you can see it's populated with the female pins. And next to each one of the pins is another hole with a plastic tab in it. That's what latches the pin into the connector. So if you need to remove one of the pins, and I'm just using a 1/4 inch common blade, or not 1/4 inch, I'm sorry, 1/16 inch common blade screwdriver, okay? You take that and you lever the plastic tab away from the pin, that releases it, and then you can pull that out. On the female connector, it's same thing, it's populated with the male pins, and next to each one of those is a plastic tab. So if I take and move that plastic tab away from the pin, that releases it, and then I can draw that out of the connector. Now, the male pin will have another pair of little metal tabs on it. That's what engages the plastic tab in the connector. So if I go to put it in there, I have to be cognizant, okay, the plastic tab is on that side, so I orient the pin in that direction, and then I can slide that in, and it latches in place. The female pin will have a square cutout on the side of it right here, and that's what engages the plastic tab in the connector. So again, I orient that toward the plastic tab and slide that into the connector, and it latches in place. I put the 2 connectors together, they lock together, and then they go onto the metal tab on the bracket.
All right, so now that Dean has explained to you how to work with the connectors, the vertical and horizontal connectors on the ignition modules, now we can go to the next step, and he can tell you how to troubleshoot from there.
Okay, if you've got a bad mag check, let's say you're doing it 35, 3600 RPM, 4000 RPM, something like that. Put the engine where it's unhappy, okay? And on whichever mag that happens to, or whichever circuit that happens to be. The first check to do is what we call the choke test, okay? Put it where it's unhappy, pull the choke full on. Now when you do that, you're likely to get some RPM rise. Ignore that, that's not what you're after. What you want to do is pay attention to the roughness of the engine. If the roughness stays the same, or if the roughness gets better or worse. If you pull the choke and the roughness stays the same, then the problem is more likely to be the ignition system. If you pull the choke and the roughness gets better or worse, then the problem is actually more likely to be carburation. Yeah, it's showing up on the mag check, but that's an indication that the problem is actually carburation and not ignition. Now, if it's the same and it indicates the ignition system, then the next check you can do, the second step, is you swap the two horizontally mounted connectors. Swap those connectors, do the mag check again, okay? What you're checking for is, does the problem move from one switch to the other, from your left switch to the right switch, or vice versa, okay? Write down the results, by the way, okay? And then shut down the engine, put those connectors back where they belong. Then the third step is swap the vertically mounted connectors. Go do your mag check again. Pay attention, does the problem swap from one side to the other? Okay, write down the results. And then put the connectors back where they belong, and then give me a call. All right? If you can do those three checks, we'll go a long ways in you being able to assassinate the gremlin that's giving you trouble right now. But a big key here is always change one thing at a time, and then write down the results. Faded ink is better than an excellent memory any day. So always remember those two key things. Change one thing at a time and write down the results. Once you've gotten to that step, then we can help you in further troubleshooting the system and find out exactly what component needs to be dealt with.
So Dean, you know, you spend a lot of time going over this in our classes. When you get to the maintenance level, which would be the second 2 days of the school.
Correct.
And so, you know, 2 days of maintenance training, a lot of that is troubleshooting the ignition system. So, you know, I'd encourage you, if you really want to get some good training on that, to come to the school. Also, I think it's important to note that when we have a roughness in the engine, at almost any RPM range, but particularly in the 3,000 to 3,500 RPM range, it's almost always the carburetors. You know, the carburetors are usually the culprit there. When you have a mag drop problem, it can also be the carburetors. But what Dean is telling you is really going to help you discern, is it a carburation issue or is it an ignition issue? So that's really some good information, Dean. So we hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please click subscribe and you'll get future videos automatically.
And if you're interested in the engine classes, we'll have a link down below for you so that you can click on that and find out more information about the classes and the schedules.
Thanks for watching, and fly safely and have fun.